Hey, beautiful star, you're listening to Her Starring Role, and I'm your host, Michele Lamoureux. Today on the show, I want to talk about how oftentimes women are underestimated. And what made me want to focus on this today is sort of in alignment with just the new theme of the show, Her Starring Role, and how so often we are so quick to put ourselves last and not really check in with what we want. Many of us have not even asked ourselves, what would make me happy right now? What brings me joy? What do I really want to do? Where do I want to be going? When I look at my life today, is it on path or do I feel like I've moved off path? And part of the challenge is the society that we live in. I was remembering being in fifth grade, and there was a local journalist that came. It was like a television reporter that was well known in the area. And he came to talk to my elementary school. And he asked the audience, what do you want to be? And the boys were getting up, and, you got firemen and lawyer and doctor, and he would repeat back what he heard. And for whatever reason, when the girls were getting up, many of them were saying they wanted to be a secretary. So for context, this was probably 1980 maybe? 1980, or maybe 1981, but early 80s. And I raised my hand and I said I wanted to be president, which was curious, or a lawyer. And he said, okay, secretary. So even though I had raised my hand and put out sort of a bold dream of what I wanted to be when I was older, he could only hear secretary for me as a young girl in that audience in the early 80s. I did not say secretary. I didn't even say a word that sounded like secretary. I said president or a lawyer. So whether or not we realize it, depending on the generation that we grew up in, other people's ability to even receive a dream that was bigger than what we could see in the community and the culture and in the world or the country that we lived in impacted what literally this man could hear. He could not hear that I wanted to be even a lawyer, but he could repeat back to the boys who said that they wanted to be a lawyer, that they wanted to be a lawyer. He didn't say to any of the boys, oh, secretary. No, he didn't say that. So, there were a lot of girls also saying at the time that they wanted to be a nurse. I think it reflected where society and culture was at that point in time, but I don't think lawyer was a stretch back then, but to him, obviously it was. And it just made me reflect that we, as adults, have the choice to put out a dream or to make a declaration of what we want to become or to do, regardless of our age. And sometimes it's hard to step into that when, even if there's not an outside person limiting what that might look like, that we ourselves have fear of dreaming too big of a dream or wanting to do something bold or audacious or exciting or something maybe out of what would be considered the norm. So I did actually pursue wanting to become a lawyer up until my 20s when I went to work for a law firm as a paralegal and really looked at the lifestyle that I was seeing around me and decided that it wasn't the path that I wanted to pursue. That was a choice that I did make. And I didn't let that TV journalist dissuade me from wanting to pursue something. But I just remember being a little disappointed and upset that he couldn't mirror back the words that I used in that moment. But that's just one small example. And I think that that kind of instance kind of shows up over and over. Could be a teacher at school, it could be a professor. I did have a situation in high school, even though I was in the top of my class, who encouraged students to come see him for a recommendation for Dartmouth because he was a graduate. And I had a friend, a male friend, who was in the bottom half of the class, who he wrote a recommendation for. And when I asked him to write one for me, he told me I should look at an all-female college or a safety school. And he would not write me the recommendation, even though he offered it to the class. And even though I was the vice president of a club that he was in charge of, that was involved in helping with like charitable things. So even though he saw me in leadership, even though he knew I was in the top of my class, he wasn't willing to write that recommendation. And it was really disappointing to see that. But again, it was another example of, in both cases, a male telling me what was possible for me in my life. So you may be thinking of situations, as I say this, where someone could have been a man or a woman, someone in leadership, someone that had a role in your life, a teacher, a coach, like I said, a professor, it could have been a parent who was trying to put a cap on possibility. And the heart of the show is about possibility. So the invitation for today is to take a look at where your dreams and your limiting beliefs come into play. So if you took a moment to sit down without anyone there to judge you, and you had the heart and spirit of a fifth grader before the world sort of dampened your idea of what was possible, and or even let's say younger, let's say a first grader, because first grade you still have this ability to dream with less people who have impacted your thinking of what is possible. What did you think was possible for yourself? What did you imagine your life might be? What excited you? And are there any clues from your childhood about, I don't know, what you love to do? Maybe you wrote poetry, or you like to write short stories, or did creative writing, or was acting. Maybe you like to play office. I love to play office. Maybe that's why I liked corporate so much. I really did enjoy the idea of being in sort of a professional setting, even when I was little. I don't know, what comes to mind for you? And when you think about what's possible from her viewpoint without the limitations, and really allow that and just have some fun with it and just draw and write and scribble down whatever comes to mind. When you do that, is there or are there other voices that are coming in that say immediately, that's ridiculous, you could never do it, you're too old now, those opportunities don't exist for you, that would be too hard to try? And I'm not even saying you need to pursue whatever you're writing down on the dream list. What I'm inviting you to do, though, is to realize that we do live in a society that wants to put barriers and caps on what we can do and create and how we're supposed to be in the world, especially as women. And then there are the voices in our own heads that have been with us to protect us as well, to try to keep us from dreaming too big for lack of a disappointment, for fear, for whatever reason. Having clarity about what those voices are and how frequently they show up in your life is really important. I've been paying very clear attention to those limiting beliefs and where they're holding me back. Because when you're aware of them, you can shift them, you can soften them, you can challenge them, and you don't have to live with this idea, like that journalist told me, that you have a bigger dream, but you're not going to be able to do that. And to be very clear, there's nothing wrong with being an assistant. It's an amazing job, and one that is, paid very well. It was just back then that was a more common answer for a lot of the women. And more importantly, like I said, it wasn't what I was saying I wanted to do. But for you right now, what are those voices, and what are they telling you, and where are they holding you back? I think that because the invitation is to focus on what's possible, what I want to invite you to do today is to see what are the small things that you can do to reclaim parts of yourself, with simply just getting clearer about what it is that you want. You don't even have to take action, but just having the acknowledgement of what is it that you want? Ask yourself in the third person, like, Michelle, what is it that you want? Say your name. What is it that I want? And listen for the answers. We can't design a life that we truly love and want to be in without first having the curiosity with ourselves. Because if we're waiting for someone else to ask us, what's going to make you happy? What is it that you really want? What do you need in this moment? Probably we're going to be waiting a really long time. Those questions aren't going to be asked. And we need to start getting comfortable asking ourselves. I've been paying attention to so many instances where I'm denying myself, even like ordering off a menu today. I ordered something quick and easy for convenience when I really wanted a more delicious breakfast. I was out with my daughter and looked at the beautiful French toast she got, and I thought, wait, why did I just get scrambled eggs and toast? I can make this at home anytime. And it's because I didn't allow myself to think about what I really wanted. I was in mom mindset and really just focused on her and where I needed to be next, and didn't even take a moment to think about, what did I want? What would light up my little girl? What would make me happy? What would be delicious right now? So it was a lesson for me to pay attention for the next time. This isn't about doing everything right. It's about really getting to know yourself better, which is truly a lifelong journey. And, I was even talking to a friend today about how, it was probably in my 30s where I started to really pay attention to how certain friendships felt and who I wanted around me and who was draining my energy. It took me a long time. And I was saying to the friend, I'm in my 50s now and I'm still in process with that, because each interaction and each dynamic changes, and where we are in life and different seasons and different situations, and who's capable of, holding space when you need it, and what you're giving that person in return, and that whole dance. So as we think about what's possible for ourselves, it's really important to just pay attention to where we are showing up for ourselves and where we are limiting ourselves, and getting clear about how those limitations are holding us back. So for me, one of those limitations is 100% not thinking about what I want oftentimes when I'm with my family. I'm really so focused on everyone else's needs and what's going to make them comfortable and what's going to be easiest and most convenient. And I don't want to do that anymore, because they're not asking me to do it. I've just sidelined myself over the years because that's what I guess I thought was expected of me or felt natural to me. But this idea of deprivation or not fully letting my needs be met at the expense of caring for those I love isn't great role modeling for my daughter, and it doesn't fulfill me in the moment, or take care of my little girl, and I'm not willing to do that anymore. So I am sharing this solo cast and I hope it helps. It was interesting because I got a lot of feedback from last week's, which I didn't realize would resonate so deeply. But this idea, if you didn't listen, I'll link it in the show notes, or you can just go back and look at last week's episode, which was just on the impact that we can have on others and on ourselves by being kind to ourselves and those around us, and the ripple effect it has. And this idea of what's possible also has a ripple effect, because in the 80s, what men thought was possible for women has evolved, but not enough. And what women think is possible for ourselves needs to evolve more. And we need to invite more of ourselves into our day-to-day and really treat ourselves like the main character in the star. What does she need in this moment? What do you need? What would make you happy? What would make you feel fulfilled? What would help you feel seen? What would make you feel more joyful? What would make you feel happy? You deserve to feel that. And there are times where, there's the ups and the downs. And even in those down places, there is joy. There's always opportunities for joy. And it can be something as simple as ordering something delicious from the menu and not thinking about the to-do lists and the next things that you need to get done for the day, and really allowing yourself to be in the moment and enjoy it to the fullest that you can. So I feel like this episode was a little bit of a stream of consciousness, but it's something that I was thinking about. And since last week's resonated, I wanted to put that out to you today. I also want to invite you to join the newsletter. I love hearing from you. So if you are on the newsletter list, all you have to do is hit reply. I get those emails. I appreciate each and every one, and I try to respond to each and every one when I get an opportunity. So feel free to say hello. Let me know what's on your mind. Submit questions you want answered if that is useful to you. Happy to do that as well on the show. And I do hope to have the new cover art soon, probably next week, I hope. So do subscribe on your favorite podcast player or over on YouTube, where the name has changed, her starring role. And more will be coming, and more interviews in the next month or so. I'm in the process of doing more interviews with some authors, but also just experts like I did when I started the show, because I really enjoy those kinds of conversations where it's not solely based on a book. So I look forward to sharing all of that with you. And I really invite you to be kind to yourself and to really prioritize what's possible in your life, and to pay attention to what little you had always dreamt of, or even adult you dreams about, and what those voices are that are limiting that possibility. And we will be tackling that in a future episode on how to quiet that voice and reclaim more of yourself so that you can live your most fulfilled and joyful life. Okay, my friends, I will be back with you next week. Bye for now.